I was flat on my back under the bright surgical lights, staring at a ceiling I had no control over. The room smelled like antiseptic, sharp and cold. My pulse echoed on the monitor next to me, steady for now but climbing every time someone adjusted a machine. I had signed the papers, gone through all the scans, and now I was seconds away from letting them take out one of my kidneys for my sister. Doctor. Torres stood over me, masked and calm, checking the instruments like he was preparing for just another routine case. He wasn't. He was about to cut into me, and I was about to hand over an organ to the same woman who had made my life hell since childhood. My mother was pacing just outside the OR, trying to control everything like she always did, while my father sat in silence, pretending this was fine. And Vanessa, she was in another room, waiting for the kidney that would keep her alive. I could feel the weight of the anesthesia mask in Dr. Shaw's hand as she leaned over. "Deep breath for me, Major Hale," she said, in that rehearsed, calm tone anesthesiologists use. She wasn't talking to me as Jordan, the single mom. She was talking to me as a patient about to go under, a soldier who had been trained to hold steady, no matter what. The mask came closer. My heart hammered. The last thing I thought about wasn't duty or honor. It was my daughter. And then the doors slammed open. The noise cracked through the sterile room. Nurses jerked around, startled. The overhead light caught two figures dripping wet from the rain outside. My 9-year-old daughter Tatum was in her school uniform, hair sticking out of uneven braids I'd rushed through yesterday morning. Next to her was Mrs. Patel, our 70-year-old neighbor, breathless and clutching her chest like she had sprinted the whole way. Security moved instantly, ready to grab them, but Dr. Torres raised a hand. Something about Tatum's face made even a decorated surgeon hesitate. "Mom," she said, her voice high but firm, "should I tell them why Aunt Vanessa really needs your kidney?" The room froze. The beeping monitor seemed louder, the sound of my pulse ricocheting off every wall. A scalpel clinked against a tray as one of the scrub nurses set it down without realizing. Everyone looked at me, waiting. But my daughter wasn't finished. She clutched a thick binder to her chest, pages stuffed with papers, photos, something she had carried through the rain. Her shoes squeaked on the tile as she stepped closer, determination bigger than her body. She looked like a kid about to present a science fair project, except this wasn't about volcanoes or solar systems. This was about life, death, and the secret no one in this room saw coming. Dr. Torres pulled his mask down slowly. His voice was steady, but there was no hiding the edge in it. "Let her speak." Tatum's eyes locked on mine. She had the same brown eyes I saw in the mirror every morning, only hers carried no hesitation. She was 9, but she was already braver than half the adults in our family. She gripped that binder tighter, and the silence thickened. Every doctor, every nurse, every assistant in the OR waited for a child to deliver the line that could stop this surgery cold. My chest tightened under the heart monitor straps, not from fear of the scalpel but from what I knew was about to spill out. She took one more step, and her small voice carried farther than anyone expected. My daughter's grip on that binder blurred from my view as the mask tilted away from my face, but the pounding in my chest was all I could hear. 6 months earlier, the noise that filled my world was nothing more dramatic than the dishwasher rattling in our small kitchen and Tatum humming along to a cartoon jingle. I was home from base later than usual, boots still dusty, uniform wrinkled from 12 hours in front of screens and servers. Cyber operations wasn't glamorous. No one makes movies about metadata and log analysis, but it was my job, and I was good at it. That night, I was just trying to get through reheated pasta and sign off Tatum's homework sheet when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Vanessa with 2 overstuffed duffel bags and the kind of smile that never meant good news. "Hey, little sis. Thought I'd crash here for a bit," she said, already stepping inside before I answered. Tatum peeked around the corner, fork still in her mouth. "Aunt Vanessa?" "Yep, kiddo." Surprise. Vanessa dropped her bags in the entryway like she'd just come back from vacation instead of being chased by creditors. She hugged Tatum too tightly, then looked around my living room like she was evaluating square footage. "Vanessa, what are you doing here?" I asked. Things got messy with the landlord. And the job. And, well, I figured family sticks together, right? You've got the space. She gestured toward the couch that doubled as my guest bed when soldiers from base crashed for the weekend. I wanted to say no. Every instinct told me to say no. But she was my sister, and Tatum was already grinning at the thought of having her aunt around. Against my better judgment, I said, "Okay, just until you get things sorted." The first week almost felt normal. Vanessa cooked a few dinners, mostly takeout she passed off as homemade. She helped Tatum with math, bragging about how she used to be great with numbers even though she had to count on her fingers. She laughed louder than necessary, told stories about high school glory days, and acted like she was doing us a favor just by being there. But then I noticed small shifts. My coffee tasted off. My head felt foggy in the mornings, even on days I hadn't stayed up late working on classified reports. During a briefing at JBLM, I blanked on a detail I'd normally recite in my sleep. It wasn't catastrophic, but enough for Colonel Davis to shoot me a look that said, "Get it together, Major." Back home, Vanessa brushed it off. "You're just tired, Jordan. You've been wound up too long. Let me take care of you for once." She started insisting on making meals, waving me away from the stove. At first I thought it was her way of paying rent without cash, but I couldn't shake the unease. Tatum noticed too. Kids catch more than adults think. She asked one night, "Mom, why do you look dizzy after dinner?" I laughed it off, said it was a long day, but her eyes lingered like she didn't buy it. 2 weeks in, I was at my desk at base, reviewing packet traffic from an exercise, when my vision doubled. I had to grip the desk just to steady myself. I'd never felt that kind of fog, not in Iraq when the heat cooked our brains, not during endless overnight watches. One of my sergeants asked if I was okay, and I lied. That night, I almost forgot to lock my external drive before bed. Almost. The thought of it made my skin crawl sloppy. Handling of sensitive data was the kind of mistake that ended careers. Vanessa sat on the couch scrolling her phone when I snapped at her. "Why are you even here, Vanessa? What are you doing with your life?" She didn't look up. "What's with the attitude? I'm trying to help you relax. You should thank me." Vi. Tatum was in her room, but the thin walls made every word travel. I lowered my voice. "I can handle my life just fine. Don't overstep." Vanessa finally glanced up, eyes narrowed. "Don't forget who helped you after Dad nearly lost the house. Don't forget who was there when you couldn't even make rent after the divorce. You owe me." The air between us thickened. I wanted to argue, to throw every memory of her selfishness back in her face, but Tatum came out asking for a glass of water. Vanessa's smile snapped back into place like nothing had happened. That night, lying awake, I tried to shake the feeling that my own home was being pulled out from under me. The next morning, Vanessa had breakfast ready, scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. She sat across from me, watching too closely as I ate. Tatum, swinging her legs under the table, asked her aunt a simple question. "When are you going back to your apartment?" Vanessa's smile didn't flinch, but her grip on the fork did. "Oh, sweetie, I'm not in a rush. Your mom likes having me here, don't you, Jordan?" I swallowed hard, forcing a smile back at Tatum, because what was I supposed to say in front of her? Later that week, my commanding officer pulled me aside. "Major Hale, your reports have been sloppy lately. Is there something going on at home?" I muttered an apology, promised to tighten up, but the truth was clawing at me. Something was wrong, and it started the moment Vanessa showed up with those bags. At home, she was more comfortable than ever. Her shoes piled by the door, her makeup sprawled across the bathroom counter, her laughter echoing off walls that used to hold peace. And every night, I went to bed more exhausted, more disoriented, and less certain of how I was supposed to protect both my job and my daughter with my sister sitting right in the middle of our lives. The dishwasher rattled again, but this time it wasn't just noise. It was the sound of something breaking, piece by piece, in a house that used to feel safe. Vanessa's laughter echoed down the hallway that Sunday afternoon as if she had always lived there. I was wiping down the kitchen counter when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Family meeting tonight." No excuses. Those 3 words always meant trouble. By 6 o'clock, my living room was packed tighter than a church potluck. Lorraine, my mother, sat at the center of the couch like a judge, pearls perfectly in place, lips pursed as if she were running a courtroom instead of her daughter's apartment. My father, Howard, hovered near the window, quiet as usual, his hands stuffed deep into his pockets. Vanessa sprawled out on the armchair like she owned it, one leg crossed over the other, smirking in my direction. "Jordan," my mother started, voice sharp. We need to talk about your role in this family. You've been distant, and that's not acceptable anymore. Your sister needs you. I glanced at Vanessa, who pretended to look fragile, twisting her fingers together like she was auditioning for a soap opera. What exactly does she need? I asked. She needs stability, Mom snapped. She's going through hard times, and you of all people should step up. You're the one with the military career, the paycheck, the benefits. Family comes first, always. Tatum sat cross-legged on the floor with a coloring book, her pencil stilled mid-page. She didn't look up, but I knew she was listening. She always listened. I didn't ask to be your project, I told Vanessa, my voice sharper than I intended. Vanessa let out a fake wounded sigh. Don't be dramatic. I just needed a roof over my head until I get back on my feet. You've been saying that since college, I shot back. Enough, Mom barked, her voice cracking like a whip. Jordan, you sound selfish. Do you forget who paid for your first car? Who covered your rent when you were struggling as a single mother? Vanessa was there for you. My fists clenched at my sides. Vanessa had helped me once by throwing a few $100s my way after bragging about how she won it at a casino. That wasn't family support. That was hush money. Howard finally spoke, barely above a whisper. Maybe we should ease up. Lorraine turned on him like a hawk. Don't start, Howard. This is between me and the girls. His shoulders slumped, and he fell silent again, retreating into the wallpaper like always. Mom, I said, my voice low but steady. I am not Vanessa's babysitter. I have a daughter. I have a career. I can't carry her every time she blows her life up. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. That attitude is disgraceful. I didn't raise you to put your career above your family. Blood is thicker than contracts and ranks. You owe her. Olu. The word owe snapped something inside me. Vanessa's smirk widened, like she'd been waiting for Mom to say it out loud. I stood, the tension crawling up my neck. I don't owe anyone for my success. I earned it. Every promotion, every medal, every sleepless night, none of you were there. Don't rewrite history. Vanessa finally chimed in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. You're being unfair, Jordan. I've had your back more times than I can count. Remember after Dad almost lost the house? I was the one running around getting signatures and making calls. Yeah, because you were the one who talked him into that bad refinance. I snapped. Her face froze for just a second, then she tilted her head and gave me that smug smile. Details. You still owe me. The silence after her words was heavy, broken only by the scratch of Tatum's pencil as she scribbled furiously on her page. She didn't want to hear it, but she didn't want to miss it either. Lorraine leaned forward, her pearls glinting under the overhead light. Jordan, let me make this clear. If you don't step up for your sister, this family will remember it. You'll be the one who turned her back when it mattered most. Do you want to be that person? I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw them all out of my apartment. Instead, I glanced at Tatum. Her little shoulders were tense, her jaw clenched. That was enough to keep me calm. I forced my voice into something that sounded less like a roar and more like a statement. I'm already that person, Mom, because I won't be manipulated into sacrificing everything for someone who never takes responsibility for anything. Vanessa gasped theatrically, hand to her chest. Wow, harsh. Howard shuffled by the window, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to say more but couldn't push it out. Lorraine shook her head slowly, like she was disappointed in me on a cosmic level. I don't know what happened to you in the army, Jordan, but you've lost your heart. Vanessa is your sister. Sisters look out for each other. One day you'll realize that. I bit back the words I wanted to say. Instead, I walked into the kitchen and started stacking plates that weren't dirty just to keep my hands busy. The meeting broke up not long after, with Lorraine muttering about my coldness and Vanessa kissing Tatum on the forehead like she'd done nothing wrong. When the door finally closed behind them, the apartment was too quiet. Tatum climbed onto a chair beside me, watching me scrub a plate with more force than necessary. Mom? She asked carefully. Yeah? Why does Grandma always act like Aunt Vanessa's perfect? I set the plate down, drying my hands on a towel, because sometimes people believe what they want to believe, even when it's not true. She thought about that for a second, then nodded, as if filing it away for later. The tension from the meeting clung to the air like smoke. I poured myself a glass of water, my reflection rippling on the surface. and wondered how much longer I could keep standing alone against an entire family that had already decided which daughter mattered more. The call came on a gray Tuesday afternoon, just as I was leaving base. Rain hammered the windshield, and traffic crawled, but my mother's voice cut through it like a blade. "It's your sister. She collapsed at work. They rushed her to Rainier Medical Center. Get here now." By the time I pushed through the hospital doors, my whole family was already there. Lorraine stood in the center of the waiting area like a general addressing troops. Howard sat in the corner with his hands folded, staring at the floor. Vanessa's husband hadn't been around in years, and no one ever mentioned him anymore. I spotted Tatum sitting quietly with her coloring book, but even she looked rattled. Lorraine wasted no time. "The doctors say her kidneys are failing. She needs a transplant. This family will do whatever it takes." I felt the words settle in my chest like wet sand. "What's her condition right now?" A nurse appeared and motioned me toward the ICU. I followed, my boots squeaking against the polished floor. Vanessa looked small in the hospital bed, her skin gray under the harsh fluorescent lights. IVs ran into both arms. Monitors beeped around her, and she gave me a weak smile. "Hey, little sis," she whispered, her voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. "Guess my luck finally ran out." Dr. Torres stepped in behind me, clipboard in hand. He wasn't just any doctor, he was someone I'd known back when we were both fresh out of training. His eyes met mine, steady but serious. "Vanessa's in end-stage renal failure. Dialysis can keep her alive for a while, but she needs a kidney transplant. Sooner rather than later." I rubbed my temples, trying to process. "And the match?" "We'll need to test family members first," he explained. "Siblings are usually the best chance." "I'll Lou." Lorraine's eyes sharpened immediately, as if the answer had already been written. "Jordan, you're healthy. You're the obvious choice." Dr. Torres raised a hand. "Let's not jump ahead. We'll test everyone." The tests happened that night. Vials of blood lined up on the nurse's tray. Mom went first, then Dad, then me. Tatum sat in a chair watching, her brow furrowed. "Will it hurt my mom?" she asked. "Just a little pinch," the nurse assured her. When it was over, I pressed the cotton ball to my arm and told myself it was just protocol. But deep down, I already knew where this was heading. The next morning, Torres called me into his office. The blinds were drawn against the drizzle outside, and the room smelled faintly of coffee. He set down the chart and looked me straight in the eye. "You're a perfect match. Blood type O positive, tissue markers align almost exactly. Honestly, it's rare to see compatibility this good." I swallowed hard. "So, if I go through with it, she'll have the best chance possible," he said quietly. "But you need to understand the risks. This isn't like donating blood. It's major surgery. Recovery is rough. There can be complications, and once it's done, you can't take it back." I nodded, but before I could speak, my mother barged in like she'd been waiting outside the door. "I knew it. God gave you the strength for a reason. This is your duty, Jordan." Torres frowned. "Mrs. Hale, this is a personal medical decision. She needs time to think." "Think?" Lorraine scoffed. "There's nothing to think about. Vanessa needs her. That's the end of it." By the time I got back to Vanessa's room, she was sitting up with a gleam in her eye that didn't look sick at all. "So, perfect match, huh? Guess the universe finally decided to even the score." I gritted my teeth. "This isn't a game, Vanessa." Her smile widened. "Relax. I'm just saying it's meant to be. You save me, and everything resets. Like old times. Old times. As if there was ever a time when she wasn't taking more than she gave." That evening, Lorraine came over to my apartment with 2 grocery bags and an agenda. She set dinner on the stove like she lived there, then sat me down at the table. "You're doing this, Jordan. You have no idea how much it means to the family. You'll be a hero." "I'm not interested in being a hero," I said flatly. She leaned in, her voice dropping low. "Don't be selfish. Do you want your niece to watch her aunt die because her mother was too stubborn to help? Is that the legacy you want?" Tatum sat quietly on the couch, hugging her stuffed bear, pretending not to listen, but her eyes followed every word. I wanted to scream at my mother, to tell her that guilt wasn't the same thing as love. But the pressure was crushing, relentless. For years, I had fought wars overseas, handled cyber threats, and protected people I'd never met. And now, in my own family, I was the one being cornered. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the consent forms. My hand shook as I signed my name. I told myself it was the right thing, the only thing, even as my gut screamed otherwise. When I put the papers away, Tatum crawled into bed beside me. She whispered, "Mom, I don't think you should do it." I smoothed her hair back, forcing a smile. "It'll be okay, baby. Sometimes we do things for family even when they're hard." Alder. She didn't look convinced. She curled up tighter and said nothing, but her small hands stayed wrapped around mine long after she fell asleep. Rain tapped against the apartment windows while I tried to grade a stack of training assessments at the kitchen table. Tatum sat across from me with her notebook, scribbling more than usual. She wasn't working on multiplication. She was writing with the kind of focus that made me curious. "What you working on, kiddo?" I asked. She closed the book halfway. "Just notes." "Notes for school?" She shook her head. "For you." Before I could press further, the front door creaked open. Vanessa swept in carrying grocery bags, dropping them on the counter like she had just rescued us from famine. "Dinner's on me tonight," she announced. "Salmon, quinoa, all the healthy stuff your doctor friends rave about." Her eyes darted toward me. I forced a nod, but my stomach tightened. The last few times she'd cooked, I'd felt dizzy afterward. Tatum's gaze followed Vanessa carefully, like she was watching a magician try to palm a card. She went back to her notebook, her pencil scratching faster. Later, after Vanessa disappeared into her room, Tatum tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, can I show you something?" She led me to her bedroom and shut the door, pressing her notebook into my hands. Inside were careful notes written in her uneven handwriting. Dates, times, little observations. Aunt Vanessa puts bottles in the trash with names that don't match. She tells Grandma on the phone she's fine but tells Uncle Mason she's dying. She gave you tea that smelled funny. You looked sleepy after. I flipped through the pages, my chest tightening with every line. "Tatum, where did you get this?" "I just listen," she said simply. "And I look." She opened her dresser drawer and pulled out 2 orange pill bottles. The labels were for different patients, but the pills inside looked the same. She left these in the kitchen trash. I thought it was weird, so I kept them. I sank onto the edge of her bed, running my hand over the covers to ground myself. "Sweetheart, this is serious. You can't just go digging through the trash." Her eyes didn't waver. "But she's lying, Mom. She keeps saying things don't match. And she told a man named Mason that once she gets your kidney, she'll be back to full power." I heard her when she was on the phone. The name Mason jolted me. Mason Klein, CEO of Copper Ridge Analytics, the contractor fighting for the same military cybersecurity contract my team was defending. The pieces started clicking in ways I didn't like. "Tatum, when did you hear that?" "A couple days ago. She was in the kitchen. She didn't know I was there." I flipped through her notebook again, the words blurring. This wasn't a child's imagination. It was methodical, detailed, and backed by actual evidence. I hugged her tight, my mind racing. "You did the right thing showing me this, but you can't tell anyone else yet, okay? Not Grandma, not Aunt Vanessa, only me." She nodded solemnly. "I knew you'd believe me." That night, when Vanessa served dinner, I pushed my food around the plate instead of eating it. She made a big show of bragging about her healthy recipes, but I pretended I wasn't hungry. Tatum copied me, claiming she already ate a snack. After dinner, Vanessa disappeared into her room again and Tatum whispered, "Do you feel better?" I nodded. "Much better." When the house finally went quiet, I pulled Tatum's notebook out again. My daughter had noticed more in a few weeks than I had while trying to juggle base duties and family chaos. There were sketches of pill bottles, notes about conversations half overheard. Even the day and time Vanessa forgot to pick Tatum up from school because she was meeting someone in a parking lot. The last entry stopped me cold. "Uncle Mason says keep her weak, keep her distracted." Aunt Vanessa laughed. I set the notebook down, my pulse hammering. If Vanessa was tied up with Mason, this wasn't just a sick sister needing an organ. This was something else, something that could cost me more than a kidney. Tatum peeked out from under her blanket. "Mom, are you mad at me?" I shook my head quickly. "No, baby, I'm proud of you. You're smarter than anyone gives you credit for." She gave me a small smile and curled back under the covers. I stayed there long after she fell asleep, staring at the ceiling, trying to decide what to do with the truth my 9-year-old had just dropped in my lap. The notebook sat heavy in my hands, each page louder than the last, leaving me no room to ignore what was right in front of me. The next morning, I let Vanessa cook breakfast, like she always insisted. She scrambled eggs, poured juice, and fussed over me with fake cheer. I sat at the table pretending to check my phone while she slid the plate in front of me. The smell was off, nothing obvious, but enough to set every instinct in me on edge. When she stepped into the other room to grab her coffee, I swapped the plate with an empty one I had hidden on my lap. The eggs and toast went straight into a napkin and then into the trash under the sink. I left the dirty fork on the plate for show and pushed it around to look used. By noon, I felt sharper than I had in weeks. My head was clear, my hands steady, my focus locked in like I'd been rebooted. The dizziness was gone. The brain fog that had been dogging me since she moved in evaporated. At base later that day, I tore through 3 backlogged reports without a hiccup. My team noticed immediately. "Looks like Major Hale's back," one of the sergeants said. He was right. Whatever had been dragging me down, it wasn't fatigue. It was her cooking. That night, I repeated the trick. Vanessa made chicken stir-fry, and again I dumped it when she wasn't looking. Within hours, I felt solid. My body didn't lie. She was dosing me with something, and she had been doing it for weeks. I sat at my desk after Tatum went to bed, staring at my laptop. If Vanessa was bold enough to mess with my food, what else had she touched? I logged into the system and pulled the last 30 days of access history. I expected to see my logins, a handful of authorized pings from command, nothing else. But the screen lit up with red flags. 3 nights earlier, at 2:13 a.m., there had been an unauthorized login attempt. The user credentials matched mine, but the session ran while I was asleep on the couch. Another spike appeared 2 weeks before, same pattern. Late-night access from my IP address. Failed once, then succeeded. I scrolled faster, my stomach tightening. Each event left behind subtle traces, metadata, packet timestamps. Whoever it was had copied files from my secure project folder. Nothing classified enough to make national news, but valuable enough to derail the contract my unit was working on. I knew better than anyone that credentials could be spoofed, but the timing was too neat. Every breach lined up with the nights I'd eaten her meals and passed out early. I set my laptop aside and stood there in the dark apartment, listening. Vanessa's door was closed, music humming faintly behind it. She wasn't subtle anymore because she didn't think she had to be. The next morning, I skipped breakfast altogether. I poured coffee straight from the pot and grabbed a protein bar from my bag. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Not hungry?" "Big day at work," I lied. "Don't want to feel too heavy." She shrugged, but her eyes narrowed just slightly, like she was filing away the deviation. That night while she slept, I pulled the trash bags from under the sink and hauled them into the garage. I tore through each one with gloves, pulling out every wrapper, every bottle. Under a pile of receipts, I found another pill container label torn, prescription written out to a name I didn't recognize. The dosage didn't match anything she should have been taking. I took photos of everything with my phone, cataloging each piece. Chain of custody mattered, even in a family war, especially in a family war. By the 3rd day of skipped meals, I was running at full speed again. No fog, no weakness. At base, I executed a drill with my team flawlessly, the kind of performance that had my CO nodding in approval. I hadn't felt that sharp since before Vanessa moved in. But clarity brought anger with it. Every dizzy spell, every moment I doubted myself, every close call at work, it wasn't me. It was her. I returned home late that night, sat on the couch, and opened my laptop again. I traced the access logs deeper, digging into packet trails, session keys. There it was an outbound connection routed to a private server linked to Copper Ridge Analytics, Mason Klein's company. I leaned back, heart pounding. Vanessa wasn't just sabotaging me out of spite. She was working with the very man who had the most to gain from my failure. Tatum padded out of her room in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Mom? Why are you still up?" I shut the laptop halfway and smiled at her. "Just work stuff. Go back to bed, baby. My." She yawned and shuffled over, climbing into my lap. Her head rested on my shoulder. "Did you eat Aunt Vanessa's dinner?" "No." "Good," she mumbled, half asleep. "Don't." I held her tighter, the weight of her small frame pressing against the fury inside me. She had noticed before I did. She had trusted her instincts, And now, so would I. The screen glowed faintly beside us, lines of data still open, pointing straight to the betrayal running through my own home. The morning after Tatum fell asleep in my lap, I woke up with the kind of clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. Years in the Army had taught me that instinct was good, but proof was better. If Vanessa was poisoning me and sneaking into my system, I wasn't going to accuse her with just suspicions. I was going to build a case the way I'd learned on deployments, methodical, precise, airtight. First thing, I set up a small camera above the kitchen doorway, one of those battery-operated models my unit used for field exercises. It looked like a smoke detector, nothing special. I placed another tiny lens by my laptop desk, hidden in the plant pot. If Vanessa tried to touch my machine again, I'd have her on video. I moved on to my laptop. Every keystroke, every login attempt would now generate an automatic log stored in a hidden partition she couldn't access. I set alerts to ping my phone if someone tried to copy files without my password. Chain of custody wasn't just a phrase, they drilled it into us, because without it, evidence crumbled. I wasn't about to let anything crumble. That afternoon, I called CID. Special Agent Colleen Draper picked up, her voice calm but sharp. She'd handled enough messy cases to know when a soldier wasn't exaggerating. "Ma'am, I don't have a case yet," I told her, "but I've got red flags. Unauthorized access from my terminal, physical evidence of controlled substances, and a civilian in my home with motive and opportunity. I want this on record." Draper didn't hesitate. "Understood, Major. I'll log it as information only for now. If you can secure evidence, call me back. But be careful. You don't want her knowing you're on to her." When I hung up, a weight lifted. Even if this went sideways, there was a record. That evening, Vanessa breezed into the kitchen, humming while she made spaghetti. She set a steaming plate in front of me. I smiled, thanked her, and waited until she left the room. The pasta went into a baggie, sealed and tucked into the freezer. If I needed toxicology, I'd have samples. Hours later, while the apartment slept, my phone buzzed. "Unauthorized access detected," it read. I slipped out of bed and watched the live camera feed from my phone. There she was, Vanessa, sitting at my desk, scrolling through my laptop with the same confidence she used when flipping through fashion magazines. She inserted a flash drive, copied files, and then deleted the activity log. Or at least, she thought she did. The system had already mirrored everything to my hidden partition. She leaned back, sipping from a glass of wine she'd brought in with her, grinning like she had just stolen candy. I screen recorded every second, time-stamped, with metadata. By the time she left the room, I had enough to prove this wasn't an accident. The next morning, she greeted me with fake cheer. "Sleep well?" "Like a rock," I lied, stirring my coffee. Tatum sat at the table with her notebook again, doodling in the margins. She glanced at me, then at Vanessa, then went back to her page. She didn't need to ask, she already knew. At base, I handed my CO the clean reports I'd finished overnight. He nodded, finally satisfied that I was back in form. He had no idea I'd spent half the night catching my sister red-handed. Back home, I cataloged everything: video clips, access logs, photos of pill bottles. Each file went into a binder on my desk and a duplicate folder on an encrypted drive. If Vanessa thought she was clever, she hadn't met Major Hale in full operations mode. That weekend, Tatum tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, can I help?" I hesitated, then handed her a stack of printed screenshots. "Organize these by date. Make sure the times match." She grinned like I'd just handed her a secret mission. For hours, we sat side by side, labeling and stacking. She worked carefully, her small hands smoothing out the papers. When she was done, she looked proud. "Now it looks real." "It is real," I said. The next night, I watched the camera feed again. Vanessa made another attempt, copying more files and whispering into her phone. "Don't worry, Mason. She has no clue. Once the surgery's done, I'll be back in the game. You'll get everything." Her voice was crystal clear. I recorded it, every word. By Monday, I had hours of footage, dozens of logs, and a freezer bag full of suspicious food. The binder Tatum helped me organize was thick, every page a nail in Vanessa's coffin. At dinner, Vanessa poured me a glass of wine. I raised it in a fake toast. "To family." She smirked, clinking her glass against mine. "To family." But my mind wasn't on her. It was on the camera above us, quietly capturing the toast of a woman who thought she was winning while the walls were already closing in. Tatum slid the finished binder across the table with both hands, like it was the most important school project of her life. The cover was plain, but inside every page was labeled, organized, and neat enough to impress any investigator. Photos of pill bottles, screenshots of messages, timestamps from laptop logins, even still frames from the hidden cameras. She had arranged them in order so that the whole story told itself without me saying a word. I flipped through slowly, page by page, my chest tightening. She had even added handwritten captions under each section. February 3. Aunt Vanessa gave Mom tea. Mom fell asleep in 20 minutes. February 10. Access logs show files pulled from laptop at 1:42 a.m., while Mom was unconscious. February 14. Aunt Vanessa on phone with Mason, recorded audio, proves it. Tatum leaned her chin on her hand, watching me read. Is it good enough? I swallowed, keeping my voice steady. It's more than good enough. This is airtight. She gave a small smile. Then she can't trick anyone anymore. That night, I sat at my desk with the binder open in front of me. My laptop displayed the latest log entries, all backed up to encrypted storage. If this went to trial, Vanessa wouldn't stand a chance. But this wasn't about court yet. This was about survival, mine and Tatum's. Vanessa strutted into the living room in her robe, carrying a glass of wine. You look busy, sis. Don't overwork yourself before the big day. I forced a smile, closing the binder halfway. Just tying up loose ends. She sipped her drink, smirking. Good idea. You won't have much time once you're recovering in a hospital bed. I clenched my jaw but said nothing. Later, once she disappeared into her room, I whispered to Tatum. From now on, we play along. No arguing, no pushing back. Let her think she's winning. Tatum nodded, her eyes fierce. Like baiting a trap? Exactly. The next few days blurred together in rehearsed normalcy. Vanessa kept up her routine meals I pretended to eat, calls she thought were private, files she thought she stole. I let her. Every move she made was another entry for the binder. On Thursday, Lorraine showed up unannounced with bags of groceries and that self-righteous smile plastered on her face. I'm proud of you, Jordan. Doing what's right for family. I bit back a retort and carried the bags to the kitchen. She never once asked how I was holding up, only how Vanessa was feeling. When I caught Tatum rolling her eyes behind her grandmother's back, it almost made me laugh. Almost. That evening, Vanessa cornered me in the hallway. Mom says the doctors are amazed at your compatibility. You really are my miracle ticket. Her words landed like a knife twist. Don't get too comfortable, I muttered. She tilted her head, smiling like a cat who already swallowed the canary. Why not? You've already signed the papers. I turned away before she could see the fury in my eyes. Later that night, I reviewed the recordings again. One video showed Vanessa sneaking into my room at 2 a.m., scrolling through my laptop while whispering, "She's so desperate to belong, she'll hand me her kidney without a second thought." She laughed quietly, stuffing my flash drive into her pocket. Hearing it made my skin crawl, but it also steeled my resolve. The evidence wasn't just circumstantial, it was damning. By Saturday morning, the binder was full. Every page had tabs, color-coded, with cross-references to digital backups. I added a final section, Chain of Custody, compiled by Major Jordan Hale. If anyone doubted the source, they'd have to argue with military-grade documentation. Tatum peeked over my shoulder. Now what? Now, I said. We wait for the right moment. She frowned. That sounds dangerous. It is, I admitted. But sometimes you have to let people think they've won, so when the truth hits, it knocks them flat. That night, Vanessa announced she was making her special soup. I accepted the bowl, stirred it, and set it aside. She watched me too closely, her smile too wide. When she finally turned her back, I poured the contents into a thermos labeled for evidence and replaced the bowl with water and crackers. Tatum watched the whole thing, her face calm, but her eyes sharp. She whispered, "She doesn't know you're stronger than her." I squeezed her hand. "She never will." Sunday evening, I sat alone at my desk, binder open, laptop glowing. My phone buzzed with a new email from Sid Draper. "Received your files. Will review. Stand by." I exhaled slowly, relief flooding me. There was now an official copy outside this house. Even if Vanessa found a way to burn the binder, the truth was safe. From the kitchen, I heard her humming. She thought she was running the show, pulling the strings. She had no idea the walls were closing in, no idea her little sister wasn't her victim anymore. I closed the binder gently, sliding it into the drawer. Tatum padded over in her pajamas, holding her stuffed bear. "Mom," she whispered, "are we ready?" I kissed her forehead, feeling her small arms wrap around my waist. "We're ready." The lamp cast a faint glow across the room, illuminating the drawer where the binder rested, a quiet, patient trap waiting for its moment. The week before the scheduled surgery felt like living under a storm cloud. Every morning, I woke up knowing the clock was ticking. Every night, I fell asleep wondering if I'd make it through the next day without Vanessa tightening her grip. Lorraine became unbearable, practically camping at my apartment. She lectured me on sacrifice, loyalty, and how families survive because of selfless acts. I tuned her out while I made coffee, nodding occasionally just to keep the peace. One evening, she cornered me in the kitchen. "Jordan, you don't hesitate when your country calls you. Why should family be any different?" I stared at her, exhausted. "Because the army doesn't lie to my face while stealing from me, Mom." Her lips tightened, but she said nothing. That was the first time I'd seen her lose footing in an argument. Tatum caught it all from the couch, scribbling into her notebook again. Later, she whispered, "Grandma doesn't care about you. She only cares about Aunt Vanessa." I didn't have to answer. She was right. As the surgery date drew closer, I doubled down on preparation. My binder was complete, but I added my written statement to it, signed and dated. I wrote a sealed letter addressed to Tatum, just in case, telling her how proud I was, how she should never think she wasn't enough. Leaving that letter in my nightstand felt like slipping a piece of my heart into a vault. On Friday, I drove to base one last time before medical leave. I handed my CO a full report on our project, every line buttoned up tight. He gave me a long look. "Major Hale, you look sharper than ever. Whatever's been dragging you down, you beat it." I just nodded. If only he knew how close I had come to breaking. That night, Draper from CID called. "I've reviewed your files. The evidence is compelling. But for now, we'll hold it under preliminary review until there's an immediate trigger. Do not tip her off." "Understood," I said. Tatum overheard part of the call. "So, it's real?" "It's real," I told her. "And we're almost there." The weekend was suffocating. Vanessa strutted around the apartment like she had already won. She checked her nails, flipped through magazines, and hummed songs while dropping hints about a fresh start, and finally getting back on her feet. On Sunday night, she caught me watching her too closely. "Relax, Jordan. Tomorrow changes everything. You'll wake up lighter, I'll wake up stronger, and this whole family can move on." I clenched my teeth so hard my jaw ached. That evening, Howard came by. He rarely raised his voice around Lorraine, but something had shifted in him. He pulled me aside while she fussed over Vanessa. "I don't like any of this," he whispered. "It doesn't feel right." "It's not right," I said quietly. He studied me for a long moment, then gave a single nod. It wasn't a rescue, but it was acknowledgement. For him, that was huge. After he left, I tucked Tatum into bed. She clutched her stuffed bear, her eyes wide in the dim light. "Mom, promise me you won't let her take it." I sat on the edge of her bed, brushing her hair back. "Baby, I promise I'm not walking into that hospital blind. You've helped me more than you know." She reached under her pillow and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I made a list, reasons why you shouldn't give it to her. All." I unfolded it, childish handwriting, uneven lines, but powerful words. "She lies. She steals. She hurts you. She doesn't love you. She only loves what you can give her." I hugged her tight, feeling tears burn behind my eyes. "You're braver than half the adults in this family." The morning of the surgery came cold and wet. Rain streaked the hospital windows as I signed the final pre-op forms. Nurses prepped me, attaching monitors, checking vitals. I caught glimpses of Vanessa in the adjacent room through a narrow glass pane. She lay there, chatting with a nurse, her face glowing with smug anticipation. Lorraine paced the hallway outside, snapping at anyone who walked too slowly. Howard sat, slumped in a chair, silent as ever. I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. Tatum's binder was with Draper now. My encrypted drive was safe. The trap was set. When Dr. Torres leaned over me, asking if I had any last questions, I shook my head. My mind wasn't on the surgery, it was on the door and the moment it would open. Every second stretched, every beep of the monitor loud in my ears. I wasn't scared of the operation anymore. I was waiting for the strike. And just as the anesthesiologist reached for the mask, I heard the crash of doors swinging open, footsteps pounding against the sterile floor. The double doors slammed against the walls so hard the metal handles rattled. Nurses froze mid-step, and Dr. Torres glanced up from the chart at the foot of my bed. There, in the doorway, stood Tatum, her hair messy from running, her school jumper damp from the rain outside. Beside her, Mrs. Patel, our neighbor, tried to catch her breath, clutching her handbag against her chest. "Stop!" Tatum shouted, her small voice slicing through the sterile hum of machines. "You can't do this!" For a moment, no one moved. The anesthesiologist held the mask inches from my face, suspended like time itself had stalled. Dr. Torres frowned. "What's going on here?" Tatum marched forward, clutching the binder against her chest. Her shoes squeaked on the floor with each determined step. "They need to know the truth before you take anything from my mom." Vanessa's head whipped around from the adjacent room, panic flashing across her face before she smoothed it into a mask of irritation. "This is ridiculous. Someone get her out of here." But Torres raised a hand. "Let the child speak." Tatum pulled the binder open and laid it on the nearest tray table. "My aunt has been poisoning my mom. She's been lying about being sick, and she's working with Mason Klein to steal from her." Gasps rippled through the room. One of the nurses muttered, "Oh my God." Vanessa tried to laugh. "She's 8 years old. She makes up stories all the time." "Oh." But Tatum's small hands flipped page after page, showing photos, timestamps, logs. "Look, here are the bottles she threw away. The names don't match. Here are the screenshots of her messages with Mason. And here," she pointed to the printed transcript of Vanessa's late-night call, "she says once she gets mom's kidney, she'll be back at full power. That's not what a real patient says." Mrs. Patel stepped forward, her voice shaky but firm. "I heard it too. Last night, Tatum showed me everything. I told her if she was right, we had to act fast." Torres scanned the pages quickly, his jaw tightening. He motioned to the anesthesiologist. "Stop the prep." Vanessa sat up in her bed, ripping off her blood pressure cuff. "This is absurd. She's manipulating you with some childish notebook." But before she could rant further, another nurse tapped on a tablet. "Doctor, there's an email in the hospital inbox. Attachments match these documents. It came from a secure sender, time-stamped an hour ago." Torres looked at me, his expression shifting from concern to grim certainty. "Major Hale, is this accurate?" I met his gaze, my voice steady. Every word. Vanessa jumped to her feet. "She's lying. She's always been jealous, always trying to ruin me." "Enough," Torres snapped. "Security." 2 hospital security officers entered the room, followed by Special Agent Draper in her dark jacket, badge clipped to her belt. She strode straight toward the binder, flipping it open with clinical precision. "Chain of custody intact," Draper said after scanning the first section. "Digital files already verified on our end. This is admissible." Vanessa's face went pale. "You can't be serious." Draper nodded to the officers. "Place her under detainment. We'll sort charges once we secure the evidence." The room erupted. Lorraine burst through the doors shrieking, "What are you doing? That's my daughter. She needs this surgery." Torres turned to her, his voice low but cutting. "Ma'am, your daughter has been poisoning a soldier under active duty and conspiring to commit cyber theft. This surgery will not proceed. It is medically and ethically impossible." Lorraine wailed, trying to push past the guards, but Howard finally stood up from the corner. His voice thundered, louder than I'd ever heard. "Enough, Loretta. You've protected her lies long enough." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Vanessa stopped struggling against the officers, her mouth hanging open as her father finally drew a line. I swung my legs off the bed, still in the hospital gown, IV lines dangling. Tatum climbed onto the step beside me, clutching my arm. Dr. Torres set his clipboard down. "Major Hale, your daughter may have just saved your life." I squeezed her small hand. "No, She did save my life. Draper closed the binder with a snap. We'll take it from here. But I'll tell you this, your 9-year-old showed more courage than most adults I've ever worked with. As Vanessa was escorted out, Lorraine's shrieks echoing down the hallway, Tatum leaned into me and whispered, "Told you she was lying." I laughed softly, relief washing through me. "You were right, baby. You were right all along." The hum of machines returned, but everything had changed. The surgery was cancelled, the trap was sprung, and the truth was finally out in the open. The hallway outside the operating room sounded like a battlefield without bullets, shouting, shuffling, crying, doors slamming. I sat on the edge of the bed, steadying my breath, still hooked to the monitors. Tatum clung to my arm while Mrs. Patel kept a protective hand on her shoulder. Vanessa fought the officers the whole way, her voice carrying down the corridor. "This is a setup. She forged everything. You're ruining my life." Her words echoed off the sterile walls until the elevator doors finally swallowed her. Lorraine didn't stop. She stormed into the room and pointed straight at me. "You think you've won, Jordan? You've destroyed this family. That was your sister, and you let them drag her away like a criminal." I stood slowly, IV pole clattering beside me. "She is a criminal, Mom. You just didn't want to see it." Howard stepped between us. His voice came low, shaking but firm. "That's enough, Loretta. V." She rounded on him, her voice shrill. "Don't you start. You've always been weak, letting me carry this family." But Howard didn't shrink this time. He straightened, shoulders broad, eyes blazing. "Weak is watching your daughter poison her own sister and saying nothing. Weak is pretending wrong is right so the house stays quiet. Not anymore." Lorraine's mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time in decades, she looked small. Tatum squeezed my hand, whispering, "Grandpa's finally loud." Agent Draper returned with 2 uniformed officers, flipping her badge open as she addressed the room. "Vanessa is in custody. We'll be processing charges for cyber theft, attempted poisoning, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. This isn't going away with a lawyer or a favor." Lorraine shook her head, muttering under her breath, "She's my daughter. She doesn't deserve this." Draper's tone cut like glass. "She doesn't deserve a kidney either, not after what she's done." Dr. Torres, still in his scrubs, let out a sigh and turned to me. "Major Hale, you're cleared. We won't be proceeding with any surgery. You'll need a brief observation before discharge, but you're free." I nodded, exhaustion hitting me harder than any deployment I'd ever faced. "Thank you, doctor." As the chaos spilled out into the hall, Carmen Vanessa's long-estranged ex appeared at the doorway. She must have rushed in when the news broke. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. "Jordan, I owe you an apology. For years I thought you were exaggerating, but she's been lying to me too. I filed for divorce this morning." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Sometimes there wasn't anything left but truth, raw and bare. Hours passed before the dust finally settled. Lorraine left with her fury, Howard trailing behind but not silent anymore. Tatum and I sat in the quiet hospital room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. She leaned against me, half asleep but refusing to let go. "Mom," she murmured, "is it over?" I kissed the top of her head. "It's over for her, not for us. We've got things to rebuild." By the time morning came, the news had spread. Local reporters tried to swarm the hospital, but Draper's team blocked them off. Inside, staff whispered about the sister who tried to poison a soldier. I didn't care. Let them talk. The truth was louder than gossip. Back at the apartment later that week, the atmosphere was different, lighter, cleaner, like someone had finally aired out a room that had been sealed for too long. Vanessa's things were gone, confiscated as evidence. The kitchen, once a trap, was just a kitchen again. Howard came by with takeout containers and a paper bag full of groceries. He sat at the table, quieter than usual, but not invisible anymore. "I should have said something sooner," he admitted. "I saw pieces of it. I just didn't want to believe." I studied him, seeing not the quiet shadow of a man I grew up with, but someone trying to start over. "Then start now," I said. Tatum jumped in before he could answer. "You can come over for dinner every week, but no speeches about family loyalty." Howard chuckled, a sound I didn't hear often enough. "Deal." Later, as Tatum set the table with mismatched plates, she asked, "What happens to Aunt Vanessa now?" "She'll face charges," I told her. "And Mason too. They don't get to just walk away from this." Tatum nodded slowly. Good. Because if you had given her your kidney, she would have just used it to hurt more people. Her words hit harder than any briefing, sharper than any mission report. She understood the truth without flinching. That night, after Tatum was asleep, I sat at my desk staring at the binder again. It wasn't just evidence, it was a record of survival. A record of a child who saw through lies when the adults couldn't. The fallout wasn't just legal, it was personal. Lorraine would never forgive me. Vanessa would fight every charge, screaming that I ruined her life. But as I looked around my quiet apartment, as I listened to my daughter's soft breathing from the next room, I realized none of that mattered. What mattered was that I was still standing, whole, untouched, and free. 6 months passed before I let myself truly exhale. By then, Vanessa was behind bars, awaiting trial with a mountain of charges stacked against her: attempted poisoning, conspiracy with a defense contractor, identity fraud. Mason Klein and Copper Ridge Analytics were under federal investigation. Every file she copied from my system had been traced back to their servers. The evidence binder Tatum built had become the cornerstone of the case. The family, though, would never look the same. Lorraine refused to visit me, choosing instead to send bitter voicemails about how I'd betrayed my blood. She clung to Vanessa's defense like it was religion, blind to the fact her daughter had tried to end me. Howard, on the other hand, finally cut the cord. He filed separation papers after 40 years of silence and started fresh in a small apartment downtown. Every Sunday, he came over with groceries, sharing stories about his youth, how he'd wanted to be a pilot, how he wished he'd stood up sooner. For the first time, I knew my father. Tatum thrived in ways I couldn't have imagined. Her school counselor said she carried herself like someone twice her age. When kids on the playground argued, she stepped in calmly, her words sharp but fair. At the spring assembly, she received a citizenship award for courage, and the applause that filled the gym nearly broke me. Watching her walk across that stage, chin high, clutching the certificate, I realized she hadn't just saved me, she had defined herself. Dr. Torres called one afternoon to check in. "Your vitals look good, Jordan. No lasting damage. Frankly, you dodged a bullet." "I had help," I told him. He smiled, the kind of smile doctors save for miracles. "Don't underestimate what you did either. Plenty of people would have ignored their instincts. You didn't." At base, things changed too. Word spread quietly about what happened. My CO pulled me aside one day. "You kept your head under pressure most people can't even imagine. That's leadership." A month later, I was promoted, given command over a larger cyber defense unit. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had faced combat zones and foreign threats, but my biggest battle came from across the dinner table. Carmen wrote me a letter that left me staring at the page long after I finished reading. "Your daughter saved more than just your kidney. She showed me the man I thought I married was never real. He lied to both of us. I hope you find peace where he left wreckage." Peace didn't come instantly. Nights were still restless sometimes. I'd wake at 2 a.m., half expecting to hear keys clicking from the next room, Vanessa's shadow hunched over my laptop. But instead, I'd hear the soft hum of the fridge, the rain against the window, Tatum breathing steady in her room. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. One evening, as I tucked Tatum into bed, she asked her usual question. "Mom, are you proud of me?" I brushed her hair back and smiled. "More than proud. You saved me. You saved us." She grinned, eyes bright. "And I didn't even need to be a soldier. Not." I laughed, kissing her forehead. "You were braver than most soldiers I've ever known." She yawned, curling under her blanket. "Sometimes the smallest voice has to be the loudest. Right?" "Exactly right." I sat by her bed until she drifted off, the scar from the IV still faint on my arm, the memory of the operating room still sharp in my mind. That scar wasn't just a reminder of what almost happened, it was a boundary line. A line between loyalty and self-destruction, between manipulation and love, between silence and truth. Looking back, I understood something I hadn't before. Honor isn't about speeches or sacrifice at all costs. It's about knowing where to draw that line and holding it, no matter who tries to push you across. Vanessa had tried to strip me of everything, my health, my career, my future, but instead, she handed me clarity. She reminded me that the best revenge isn't giving in to the darkness someone else drags you toward. It's standing tall, living with honor, and succeeding despite them. When people ask how I survived, I tell them the truth. I didn't do it alone. A 9-year-old girl with a notebook and more courage than an entire room full of adults saved me. And that's the story I'll carry with me always, that in the face of betrayal, the greatest act of revenge is living, thriving, and refusing to be broken. Looking back now, I see how close I came to losing everything, not just a kidney, but my career, my health, even my future with Tatum. Vanessa thought she had built the perfect trap, backed by family pressure and years of manipulation. What she didn't count on was a 9-year-old who refused to stay quiet. Tatum forced everyone to face the truth when the adults around her were too blind or too afraid. She reminded me that courage doesn't come with age or rank, it comes with conviction. Watching her stand in that operating room, binder in hand, calling out lies with the kind of certainty most grown men can't manage, I realized she had done what the rest of us had failed to do: draw the line. Honor isn't a speech, and it isn't blind loyalty. It's a boundary. It's knowing when to say no, even to the people who share your blood. It's choosing truth over comfort, integrity over pressure, survival over sacrifice. My sister sits in prison now, still blaming everyone but herself. My mother clings to denial like it's oxygen. And maybe that will never change. But what matters is that Tatum and I are free of their grip. We built something stronger out of the wreckage: trust, resilience, and a bond that can't be broken. The best revenge was never about punishment. It was about living. Living with honor, living with success. Living in a way that proves no one, not a sister, not a parent, not a corrupt company, gets to decide my worth or my future. And thanks to the smallest, bravest voice in the room, I get to live that truth every single day.